the millennial generation and social enterprises. It's no longer the time where doing good and making money have to be considered separate goals. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have one and the same. Previously, the majority of businesses operated on a single bottom line. However, times are changing, and businesses are starting to recognize they need to do more than just make money. They need to focus on a triple bottom line. Triple bottom line is commonly known as the 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit, a measure of social, environmental, and economic performance. Many corporations are attempting to ride the wave on the forefront of this new movement by restructuring and creating positions such as Chief Sustainability Officers or Corporate Social Responsibility, also known as CSR. By 2020, all businesses will be required to use something called the Innovative Accounting Standards and report through the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, where they'll have to measure all 3 Ps in order to make sure that they're keeping track of their triple bottom line. Out of this theory of triple bottom line came something called a social enterprise, a for-profit business that aims to do good in the world. What you're going to learn today is 3 steps to create your social enterprise: building your winning team, using a proven strategy, and going to market. But why listen to me? I'm not an expert, but I can show you what we did to create our social enterprise, and through that, I hope you learn how to create your social enterprise. Our team and I have recently been published in Forbes magazine as the top 30 entrepreneurs under the age of 30. We created a social enterprise that's on track to educate over 2 million children, create 100,000 new jobs, and generate over $25 million in profit in less than 5 years. Our social enterprise is called Tembo. Tembo means elephant in Swahili, and the reason we chose an elephant to represent our social enterprise is because elephants are known for being compassionate mothers in the animal kingdom. And our education focuses on the mothers of the children. We educate 0 to 6-year-old children in slums of developing nations, specifically starting in Nigeria. The reason IBM called us the Uber for education is because we pair home educators with parents, just like Uber pairs drivers with passengers. So picture Jasmine, she's one of the mothers in our program from the Nigerian slum. She doesn't have education for her children, but she does have a mobile phone. So we train and certify home educators from Jasmine's own community to visit Jasmine's home and teach her through SMS text messages. Jasmine then educates her children in her own home. For educating her child and answering a quiz correctly, we reward her with free minutes in text to her mobile phone, gamifying the learning process. So we hope that you'll learn from our social enterprise how you can create yours. So let's talk about that with starting in step 1, building a team. When I was at the University of Tampa, I was able to recruit my fellow colleagues. But if I wasn't in the university, I would use 3 sources: meetups, co-founders lab, and Angels List. If you're not familiar with these, they're ways that co-founders can join together to build any type of entity they like. You log in, make an account, you can put your skill sets in there and match up with complementary skill sets that other co-founders might have. Some might already have ideas, some might not. But these are the 3 tools that I would use to gather my team. Secondly, I would use 4 different positions for my team. I think these are the key to building a successful startup. You should have 2 people in tech, 1 front end and 1 back end, 2 people in marketing, 1 front end and back end, and by that I mean 1 that can build a social presence on the front end, and back end would be data analytics. Then I would have someone that's very savvy with financial Excel sheets, and lastly, someone that's well-versed in supply chain management and logistics. And lastly is have high expectations for recruiting your team. When I recruited my team, I recruited 20 individuals because I knew that all 20 of them would not stay. And they ranged from MBAs to finance and economic double majors. And I had extremely high expectations and strict requirements for them. Every single night, even though we were all full-time students, I required them to meet at 10:30 p.m. every single night. And throughout that time, people started dropping off because of other commitments. And we ended up with 5 individuals, plus me, that remained the most passionate and committed to this idea. And so I always recommend recruit way more than you actually need and require extremely high expectations, and you'll end up with a fine-tuned, passionate, committed team. The second step is to strategize. Use a proven strategy through 3 methods. First is brainstorming. Most people think brainstorming is just this esoteric idea that people use as a buzzword, but we've defined it as a 3-step model. The first step is idea generation, and there's one rule. You cannot use the word no or but. You can only use the word yes and and. And the reason why is because in idea generation, you're trying to have as many ideas flourish as possible. And the words no and but suppress ideas, where the words yes and allow ideas to flourish. So an example of this is we had an unfortunate circumstance. So the competition we were in that Vinny was describing, our original team name was Othello, which is a Greek amalgamation of the Greek god of wisdom, Athena, and the Greek god of knowledge, Apollo. Bring them both together, you have Othello. And our logo was the symbol of Athena, which is the owl, and the symbol of Apollo, which is a wreath of Averna that goes around the owl's head. We thought it was a great logo and a great name. We got a call from attorneys from the competition we were in, and they said, Phil, we have a problem. Your logo has been flagged by our attorneys, and you don't have to change it, but we recommend doing that now before you start building a social presence. Apparently, our logo was very similar to TripAdvisor's logo. They have the owl with the wreath of Averna. We had no idea, so we had to change it. So now we're in Nigeria at this point, and we had to change our logo and our name. And so we went through this brainstorming process to iterate and come up with the new name, which is Tembo. It took us about 2 months to do this, and we use this method. So the first is idea generation. So you sit your team down, and you come up with as many ideas as possible. So we had 50 different names, 50 different logos up on a whiteboard. And it doesn't matter how bad the idea is, you just want as many names and logos as possible up on the board. And we did that. The second step is voting on the top 3. You then have your team tally up votes, and you pick the 3 that had the most votes. And you move those to the third section, which is pros and cons. You now go through each one of those top 3 and pick out the pros and cons, and one will likely emerge. However, it might not. And for us, it didn't. And so we had to repeat this process many times over that 2-month period in order to come up with Tembo, which we're very happy with now, and we like the logo much more than we did before. So these are the 3 steps: idea generation, vote on your top 3, and then use a pros and cons evaluation. And we do this with every single major decision we make, not just with logos and names. If we want to expand into a new market, if we want to add or remove someone from a team, we always come up with this brainstorming model to move forward and make the most informed decision. The second step is to innovate. So for strategizing, we had brainstorming, innovate, and read. So the second step, innovate. Don't reinvent the wheel. Innovation came from deriving an already successful business model and improving it slightly to be even better than it was before. So we did a lot of research on previous companies that have already been successful operating in the slums of developing nations and emerging markets. And we just took them and innovated them to make sure that they met the goals of serving our population's needs. So don't try and create something new and fresh from the start, from the ground up. Learn from people that are already doing it more successfully than you. And lastly is read books. I believe, and our team believes, that these are the 3 foundational books to creating your social enterprise. The first one, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid by C.K. Prahalad, is arguably the most well-known book with regard to social enterprises and operating a business in developing nations, slums, and emerging markets. This book helped give specific business acumen and knowledge to developing a strategy to operating in these markets, which are extremely difficult to operate in. Making Good is the book I referenced in the beginning by Billy Parrish and Deva Jula. They give specific job opportunities, companies to reach out to if you're looking to get into the social enterprise space and maybe you don't want to start your own company, but maybe you want to join someone that's very successful, whether it's in a social business, an environmental business, or an emerging market business. And then lastly is abundance. I'm sure you've all heard of Peter Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize. He's also the author of Abundance and the book Bold. And he talks about these markets are the future of business. There's too many people that are focusing on the US and developed nation markets and not enough people focusing on the developing nations. These are the booming parts of the world. The reason we started in sub-Saharan Africa is because there's more 0 to 6-year-old children that live there than anywhere in the world. And the reason we picked Nigeria is because it's the world's fastest growing phone market, 4th fastest growing population. It's going to outnumber the US population by 2050, and it's only twice the size of California. And they have an average birth rate of 5.5 children per mother. These are booming markets that we could be taking advantage of and capitalizing on to help lift these people out of the poverty cycle. The third step of building and creating your social enterprise is going to market. There's 3 components to this: bootstrapping, iterating, and pitching. With regard to bootstrapping, we learned to bootstrap from a book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And we learned to build an MVP. Who knows what an MVP is? Excellent, a minimum viable product. And we built the bare minimum we could with what we had living in the US to operate in Nigeria. And we bootstrapped, we completely self-funded from our own personal savings accounts, and we created a GoFundMe.com page where we raised $12,000. So a total of $50,000 is what got us to where we're at today. We've sold no equity yet. And so we bootstrapped using the lean startup model by building an MVP and then going to test to your market. So we actually went into Nigeria to test on our own dime. That's the vice president of Nigeria right there. That's myself and Samantha, our other team member. Here's some of the children in the Badia slum of Lagos, Nigeria. We knew how important it was to get out and validate your market, show proof of concept. This is one of the children in our program. This is the Makoko slum. This slum is entirely built on the water. It's only accessible by canoe. And there's 200 to 300,000 people that live there with only one school serving 200 children. So there's tens of thousands of children not receiving an education simply because they cannot be accessed. Tembo is a direct solution to that problem, and we didn't learn that until we got there. If we would have listened to all of our mentors and secondary research, we would have never iterated as fast as we did. That's the former president of Nigeria. This is Samantha with some of the children. So the second step is iteration. So we learned 3 things when we got to Nigeria. The first was we were trying to subsidize this entire program and not charge them at all. We also were trying to find a foundation that would provide the mobile phones to us that we can give to the parents in the program. And lastly, we learned how important using the American flag was. So when we got there, it was completely for free, and we were having a foundation subsidize the phones. But our home educator said, free? I don't know how it is in the US, but here in Nigeria, people do not respect nor appreciate anything they get for free. So we started charging them, and we pivoted the business model dramatically. I'm sure you can imagine how big of a pivot that is when you're not charging at all, and now you're charging a monthly subscription fee. We also found that 100% of the parents in our program had mobile phones already, and 43% of them had smartphones. And then the American curriculum. They typically look at American curriculum as number 1, UK as number 2, and France and Germany tied for number 3. So we started using the American flag on all of our materials as promotion techniques, and people wanted to sign up right away. We had over 100 people sign up on our waiting list from one presentation alone at a church and school there. Whoop. This is our team, and this is us pitching at the Clinton Global Initiative in front of 1,000 global leaders in New York City at the Clinton Global Initiative annual meeting in September. So the last stage of going to market is pitching. Pitch to as many people as possible and pitch in competitions. If we did not attend this competition, we would not have achieved the knowledge and the exposure that we have. We met President Bill Clinton. We pitched in front of 1,000 global leaders at his event. We were also published in Forbes as a 30 under 30. We were coached by executives from Google, Microsoft, Lego, MIT, and Harvard, as well as IBM. We've been featured in some pretty well-known news sources, and that's allowed, if we did not attend that competition, we would not make it to that stage. So one of the most common mistakes I hear from new entrepreneurs is that they don't pitch their idea because they're afraid someone will steal it. And I can promise you that's one of your biggest flaws if that's what you're doing. We pitch to as many people as possible because we learn so much from pitching to others and joining competitions. So how do you create your pitch? So this is the outline I use. I recommend it for all pitches, especially if you're going into a competition. It gives you the exact criteria to meet to make sure that you're building a successful pitch to a vast audience. So this is Jasmine, one of the mothers in our program. This is Brent, our CFO. This is Abigail, one of our home educators. And one of the most revitalizing moments of my entire life, the most exhilarating moment of my entire life, was seeing this mother watch her 3-year-old boy show off his newly found intelligence that he acquired from the Tembo program. Seeing the weight lifted off her shoulder, knowing that her child finally has an opportunity for a quality of life that she would have never been able to provide him with. After doing this business, I've started other businesses before. I don't believe there's anything else in life other than trying to maximize humans' potential. This is not a dress rehearsal. We're only here once, and we have to make the most of it. So I believe that everyone should be building something that's going to create a better planet, a better world for the humans that live here. We have such a short lifespan. Why not make the most of it? And I hope that you'll help us maximize children's potential with Tembo. Thank you so much. And I think we have time for questions, and I'd love to answer any questions you have. My goal here today is to help you build a social enterprise. Yes. It's a great question. I believe that there's many different levels of competitions. So there's very early stage startup competitions, there's mid-level startup competitions, and then there's very advanced criteria you need to meet for high-level competitions. I can tell you that 5 years ago, I was pitching in front of anyone I could with different ideas. I was a finalist for season 4 of Shark Tank on ABC. So I think you just have to be confident in yourself to fail and be embarrassed, be comfortable with getting embarrassed. I've failed many times, and I think failing fast and failing publicly has allowed me to achieve the goals that I've achieved so far. For example, we were in the regional finals for the Holt Prize competition, and they're naming the regional finalists: Harvard, Yale, MIT, Stanford, University of Tampa. Is that a school? it was a very humbling moment for us, but we defeated all 8 Ivy League universities, and we were the only team from the United States to make it out of over 22,000 teams. Thank you. But I don't say it to impress you, but to impress upon you that regardless of where you come from, we came from University of Tampa. And the only reason we were able to achieve that success is because we believed that we could. And we weren't afraid of getting embarrassed. And I can tell you there's many times when I've pitched in front of people, I had no idea what I was talking about. And those failures, that embarrassment allowed me to iterate myself and the business to move forward and make sure we were ready for the higher level competitions. Yes, and then I saw you over there. Go ahead.
How much time do you spend in your market versus here in the US? Your market's not here, but in school you're working some here.
Great question. So we lived in the slums of Nigeria for 3 months. We were up and running within 3 days of arriving. So a lot of that came from pre-work. We literally cold called. I did not have a previous connection before going to Nigeria. I cold called NGOs and told people what I wanted to do and met up with them when we arrived in Nigeria. And we built all those connections within 3 months, so anyone could do it. And I think that right now, before we left Nigeria, we knew that we were going to have to go back to the US. So we planned building our operations in Nigeria, knowing that we're going to have to be able to operate from the US. And that's what we do now. We meet with our Nigerian team almost every day via WhatsApp and Skype. So using that technology is very important. I was supposed to go back to America for an accelerator in Boston for 7 weeks. I canceled my flight back to America and stayed in Nigeria to make sure it was fully operational from my team in the US before I left. Sure. So where we're at now is we're currently raising $1 million to scale the business. We're going to use it for working capital. And that $1 million allows us to break even by year 3, quarter 2. So currently our office is on the 8th floor of the Entrepreneurship Center at the University of Tampa. We'd love to show it to you and give you a tour anytime you like. And we're just working on getting back to Nigeria, and that's really why we're raising the $1 million. And we're doing that through competitions, through talking to investors, and through CSR donations from for-profit companies as well as foundations. Yes?
What skills do you want to do? When you have nothing, what's the first thing you want them to learn? Math, you think that you can do it awesome,
So what do we teach them? So we teach 0 to 6-year-old children in all 4 domains of learning: cognitive, language, motor, and social emotional. And we have activities that are age appropriate and developmentally appropriate as well as culturally adapted for each of those domains for each age group. We actually start prenatally in the mother's womb at week 13 because that's when the fetus starts to develop sensitivity to light and sound. So the home educator will go into the home, teach the parent through role play. The home educator will act as the parent will act as the child. They switch roles, takes about 15 to 20 minutes. Then the home educator leaves the house and the parent will educate the child, all using the SMS text message instructions. And so we focus on all 4 domains. Do you have a question? Go ahead. Sure. That's a common question we get. Are we exploiting children in slums by charging them? And most of the time we get those questions from people that aren't well versed in the social enterprise world. If you read these books, it's going to enlighten a lot of people on how this is a more sustainable model than a nonprofit. And nothing against nonprofits, but just sustainability-wise, waste-wise, these are more successful models for the future. We look at this, and I'm sure Vinny will attest to this too, there's no other way to be doing business. We should always be doing business this way. So, and Vinny said this before, There's no longer going to be this buzzword of social enterprises. This is just going to be the baseline way to operate a business. Make sure you're doing good in all three bottom line, triple bottom line, and help change the world. So there's 2 billion in the world's slums. They call it the bottom billion. And so we're focusing on expanding to the rest of Africa, Southeastern Asia, India, and South America. Those are predominantly where the most underdeveloped countries are. We can essentially operate in any country that has a telecom and needs education. See, typically in Nigeria and other underdeveloped countries, it's not that they don't have schools. They have tons of schools. It's that the schools are more like daycare drop-off centers rather than educational institutions. And no one's accessing this population right now. And so we need to make sure that we're helping. Instead of giving the fish, we're teaching them how to fish. And we believe that it's most important to start from the earliest age possible. The malleability of the brain drops more dramatically from 0 to 8 months than any other time in a human brain's life. And so our end users, typically one parent will not have any education at all for her 0 to 6-year-old child. Another end user is a parent that has somewhat of an education, but it's more like a daycare center. And then our third end user is a parent that has a quality education and uses Tembo as a supplement. Yes. The innovative accounting methods, that wasn't just a term I made up, that's an actual term you can look up. And there's the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. So it's using IFRS, so the International Accounting Standards for everyone is going to be required to measure a triple bottom line. Exactly. I'm excited for it. That's a great question. I don't know that much to speak intelligently on it, but you can look it up on Global Reporting Initiative on Google and it'll show you. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions outside.